Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan speaking with Mark Zuckerberg. I pushed aside today's videos because I needed people to see this. Mark Zuckerberg in this clip is talking about the fact checkers. If you didn't know, Mark Zuckerberg decided to get rid of fact checkers on Facebook and Instagram, and he's going to go with a model more like Elon Musk when it comes to fact checking, with a community notes style type of thing, which can also be weaponized, and we'll get into that a little bit after. But he's turned over a new leaf apparently. But I'm going to talk about what actually brought that about, because it's great for freedom of speech if he follows through, but I don't know about Zuckerberg. I got to be honest. I like it, but I'm watching closely. Just like Elon Musk. You got to watch closely. Let's get into the clip.
Good to see you.
You too.
What's going on?
Chill week.
Yeah, sort of. This recent announcement that you did about content moderation, how has that been received?
Probably depends on who you ask.
Right.
But look, I mean, I've been working on this for a long time. So, I mean, you got to do what you think is right. We've been on a long journey here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's and I think at some level you only start one of these companies if you believe in giving people a voice, right? I mean, the whole point of social media is basically, giving people the ability to share what they want.
Right.
And it goes back to, our original mission is just give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected.
What do you think started the pathway towards increasing censorship? Because clearly we were going in that direction for the last few years. It seemed like we really found out about it when Elon bought Twitter and we got the Twitter files. And when you came on here and when you were explaining the relationship with FBI, where they were trying to get you to take down certain things that were true and real, and certain things they tried to get you to limit the exposure to them. So it's these kind of conversations. Like, when did all that start?
Yeah, well, look, I think going back to the beginning, or like I was saying, I think you start one of these if you care about giving people a voice. I wasn't too deep on our content policies for like the first 10 years of the company. It was just kind of well known across the company that we were trying to give people the ability to share as much as possible. And issues would come up, practical issues, right? So if someone's getting bullied, for example, we deal with that, right? We put in place systems to fight bullying.
Right.
If someone is saying, hey, someone's pirating copyrighted content on the service, it's like, okay, we'll build controls to make it so we'll find IP protected content. But it was really in the last 10 years that people started pushing for like ideological based censorship. And I think it was two main events that really triggered this. In 2016, there was the election of President Trump, also coincided with basically Brexit in the EU and sort of the fragmentation of the EU. And then, in 2020, there was COVID. And I think that those were basically these two events where, for the first time, we just faced this massive institutional pressure to basically start censoring content on ideological grounds.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when it first came up in 2016, did it come under the guise of the Russian collusion hoax?
And this is the thing. At the time, I was really sort of ill-prepared to kind of parse what was going on, right? It's, I think part of my reflection looking back on this is I kind of think in 2016, in the aftermath, I gave too much deference to a lot of folks in the media who were basically saying, okay, there's no way that this guy could have gotten elected except for misinformation. People can't actually believe this stuff, right? It has to be that there's this kind of like massive misinformation out there. Some of it started with the Russia collusion stuff, but it kind of morphed into different things over time.
Well, he was so ideologically polarizing, right? Like, people didn't want to believe that anybody looked at him and said, this should be our president.
Yeah, so I took this and just kind of assumed that everyone was acting in good faith. And I said, okay, well, there are concerns about misinformation. We should, just like when people raised other concerns in the past and we try to deal with them, okay, yeah, people if you ask people, no one says that they want misinformation. So maybe there's something that we should do to basically try to address this. But I was really worried from the beginning about basically becoming this sort of decider of what is true in the world, right? That's like kind of a crazy position to be in for billions of people using your service. And so we tried to put in place a system that would deal with it. And early on tried to basically make it so that it was really limited. We're like, all right, we're just going to have this system where there's these third-party fact checkers and they can check the worst of the worst stuff, right? So things that are very clear hoaxes, that there's like, it's not like we're not parsing speech about whether something is slightly true or slightly false, like Earth is flat, things like that, right? So that was sort of the original intent. We put in place the system and it just sort of veered from there. I think to some degree, it's because some of the people whose job is to do fact checking, a lot of their industry is focused on political fact checking. So they just kind of veered in that direction. And we kept on trying to basically get it to be what we had originally intended, which is just, it's not, the point isn't to like judge people's opinions. It's to provide this layer to kind of help fact check some of the stuff that seems the most extreme. But it just, it was just never accepted by people broadly. I think people just felt like the fact checkers were too biased. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily even so much in what they ruled, although sometimes I think people would disagree with that. A lot of the time, it was just what types of things they chose to even go and fact check in the first place. So I kind of think, like, after having gone through that whole exercise, it I don't know, it's something out of like 1984, one of these books where it's just like it really is a slippery slope, and it just got to a point where it's just, okay, this is destroying so much trust, especially in the United States, to have this program, and I guess it was probably about a few years that I really started coming to the conclusion that we were going to need to change something about that.
It was so clearly against him. The majority of the television entities and print entities were against him, the majority of them. So if without social media, without podcast, they don't stand a chance. So they're uniquely aware of the importance of giving people their voice, free speech. But you do have to be careful about misinformation, and you do have to be careful about just outright lies and propaganda campaigns, rather. And how do you differentiate?
Well, I think that there are a couple of different things here. One is, this is something where I think X and Twitter just did it better than us on fact-checking. We took the critique around around misinformation. We put in place this fact-checking program, which basically empowered these third-party fact-checkers. They could mark stuff false, and then we would downrank it in the algorithm. I think what Twitter and X have done with community notes, I think is just a better program. Rather than having a small number of fact-checkers, you get the whole community to weigh in. When people who usually disagree on something tend to agree on how they're voting on a note, that's a good sign to the community that there's actually like a broad consensus on this, and then you show it. And you're showing more information, not less, right? So you're not using the fact check as a signal to show less. You're using the community note to provide real context and show additional information. So I think that that's better. For when you're talking about like nation states or people interfering, a lot of that stuff is best rooted out at the level of kind of accounts doing phony things. So you get like, whether it's like China or Russia or Iran or like one of these countries, they'll set up these networks of fake accounts and bots, and they coordinate and they post on each other's stuff to make it seem like it's authentic and kind of convince people it's like, wow, a bunch of people must think this or something. And the way that you identify that is you build AI systems that can basically detect that those accounts are not behaving the way that a human would. And when we find that there's like some bot that's operating an account. How
do you differentiate? How do you figure that out?
It just, there are some things that a person just would never do, right? So,
have you met Lex Friedman?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He might not be.
Well, but is he going to
pass your Turing test?
Is he going to take is he going to make a million actions in a minute? It's probably not.
Okay, so it's that.
It's
things that aren't
it's more
possible?
subtle than that. I think these guys are pretty sophisticated, and it's an adversarial space. So, so we find some technique, and then they basically kind of update their techniques. But we have a team of it's effectively like intelligence, counterintelligence folks, counterterrorism folks, AI folks who are building systems to identify what are these accounts that are just not behaving the way that people would, and how are they interacting? And then sometimes you trace it down, and sometimes you get some tips from different intelligence agencies, and then you can kind of piece together over time. It's like, oh, this network of people is actually some kind of fake cluster of accounts, and that's against our policies, then we just take them all off.
It's so funny because like you feel like he's going in the right direction, and then he's like, and then you get some tips from intelligence agencies. Bro, that's what got you in the mess in the first place with the Hunter Biden laptop. That's exactly what happened. You got a tip, and the tip wasn't true. He's going down the same path, and now it seems and I'll speak to both sides of this, of course, but now it seems where he was using fact checkers who are biased. Now he's going to use AI that's made by people who are biased. I don't know. I understand he wants to get things done in a proper way, but doesn't that just sound like more of the same? Am I wrong about that? You know? I don't know, man. Listen, I'm going to show you what he actually started talking about here. Let's play this clip here. This was the big announcement he made. And honestly, it sounds amazing, but we'll go through this a little bit because I have a theory that I'll talk to you about after I play this clip where I feel like this goes against Trump a little bit. Believe it or not. I'll get to that after.
Hey everyone. I want to talk about something important today because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high severity violations. And for lower severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed. So we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
So, robotic, stay good out there. Stay in human form out there, ladies and gentlemen / otherwise. Stay good out there. He's getting better. There's at least, nowadays, there's at least a 25% chance this guy's a human being. But believe me, you're laughing, but it used to be about 4%. There was when you saw him drinking that water, you're like, oh, it's not real. He's not a real guy. He's an AI-generated CEO. Sam Altman and Elon Musk made this guy. Look, you think the video's paused. Video's not paused. He's just sitting there, not blinking. You know what I mean? Very interesting stuff. I mean, again, I get what he's saying when he's saying he's going to make things different, but with one thing he mentioned, moving the California team to Texas. Is he moving the people who are in Cali to Texas, or is he taking away the people in Cali's jobs, or maybe it's a third party type of thing, and he's bringing it over to people who are in Texas already? I wish he would clarify that. I assume he's taking away the responsibility from those people in California, bringing it over to people in Texas. I didn't know Facebook or Meta had any person in Texas, and community notes are better, but they're still subject to people who are biased. Someone who's biased can sign up to the community notes, and because that's usually how it works. You're like a community notes member. They can sign up and put something there. Now, obviously, if there's 1,000 people and that one person's biased, maybe everybody else is above board, and then you get a factual community notes check. But even past that, cyber attacks are still available because they're still going to go based on how many people report something. So you can have a bunch of people just report. Literally the administration could have a bunch of people, a bunch of bots report something, and now all of a sudden, without even looking at it, because like he said, you have these AI systems, the AI systems just see a bunch of reports. They see 1,000. Let's say they see 2,000. They go, okay. And the reports all say the same thing. They go, okay, let's throttle this down until we have a clearer view of what this is. We're still in the same situation a little bit, in my view. And now let's just get into, and of course the fact checkers were way too biased. Honestly, they weren't even biased. The fact checkers in themselves were almost like a cyber attack, because what would happen is you'd put something out, and Instagram's a great example. The natural immunity thing, that hashtag got deleted. Why? It was all true. But the fact checkers would come, and they still do this. They would just label your thing false. And then if you were somebody who clicked through, which most people didn't, they would just listen to it and be like, well, it's been false, so I know that this is not true. But if you clicked through, they would provide a website and it wouldn't lead to anything. It's not like community notes where there's a bunch of articles and you can actually read through what the context is. It would lead to nothing. It would lead to their own site and then it would just show that they marked it false. And it was very odd. And sometimes if you'd click through, you'd actually read the context if they left any available for you, and it would match up with the video, and you'd realize that the video is actually true, and they're just marking it false. Or partly true, or partly false. That's what they would do. They would never say partly true. They always put it towards the negative. So I don't really believe that. Now let's get into the theory I have that this could be bad for Trump. Think about this now. This is happening as Trump's getting in office. So I'm not saying the Trump administration is going to post a bunch of misinformation, and that's why it goes against him. Now all of a sudden, everybody who's against Trump is going to have, this is just if everything he said is true and it works out just perfectly. That means people who are against Trump are going to have the ability to post misinformation about him. They're going to have the ability to say there was good people on both sides hoax and nobody will correct them. Like, they're going to have that ability now. Now, of course, community notes will be able to step in, and that's a good thing. But it kind of comes to mind where I'm like, like having the fact checkers there really worked in the Biden administration's favor. Maybe not having them there anymore is going to not work in Trump's favor. I mean, listen, and you know me, I'm not wearing any pants. If I stood up, all you'd see is a tinfoil Speedo, right? So that's just me throwing out a theory there. Couldn't prove that at all. We'll have to actually see. And let's get into what I think about Mark Zuckerberg. Trump actually threatened Mark Zuckerberg with life in prison. This is real. Trump actually said right here, the quote is, "We are watching him closely. And if he does anything illegal this time, he will spend the rest of his life in prison, as will others who cheat the 2024 election," Trump wrote. Trump wasn't playing around. And listen, when Trump first said that, it seemed like he was going to win. But when he won, Zuckerberg kind of kicked it into gear. He started going to Mar-a-Lago. He said he wanted to be on the ground floor. He wanted to help with what's going on in the administration. He's trying to buddy up to next to Elon. And Elon's like, if you want to have that fighting match, we can have that match. You want to fight? Elon wasn't having it. He's like, anytime, anywhere, buddy. And he's probably very skeptical of Mark Zuckerberg. So the thing is, Mark Zuckerberg only stepped into this everything we're seeing right now after being threatened with prison for life. And then the guy who threatened you becomes president. And now all of a sudden he's like, we got to get back to our roots. It's like, I don't know how organic that is, man. I'm going to be honest. But again, I love it. I love to see what's happening with Mark Zuckerberg. He spoke up when President Trump had his first assassination attempt. He said it was the most American thing he's ever seen. And that's fantastic. All of that is great. But when Trump had that first assassination attempt, a lot of people were like, oh, this election's done. It's over now. This guy's going to win. Maybe that's why Zuckerberg turned on, As much as I like Zuckerberg. I like that he has this arc. I've watched this arc where he said he was getting in touch with the Bible and he started finding a lot of grounding in his religion, in Judaism, but still, reading the Bible. I don't know. He said he was finding solace in the Bible, getting back to his roots of Judaism, and he found it all very grounding to know that there was something more powerful above him. Okay, cool. I like that. I'm Christian. I'm down. I like that a lot. My Bible's right here. But as time went on, he started doing martial arts. He started really getting into the UFC. He was around those guys. He's helping them train. He's going through jiu-jitsu tournaments, all this good stuff. And then he has a conversation with Vivek. I don't know if you guys know this. He was at a UFC event. Vivek touches on his shoulder and says, hey, man, it would be really great if you could come clean with what was going on with the Biden administration. He goes, I think it would be a really good conversation for people to start having. 2 months later, he comes out with that note, or I guess that letter, when he admits that the Biden-Harris administration was putting pressure on him. And it seems like he's having this very organic story arc, whatever you want to call it. Villain arc going back around. What's that called? I don't know. A 360, I don't know. But I don't know. He's one of those guys, it's hard to trust because I've seen him censor so many people, There was a lot of us who were trying during the pandemic. We were trying to communicate. We were trying to figure it all out. We were trying to have open conversations, and he wasn't letting us. We did it, beyond his app, of course, but a lot of stuff happened. He censored Tucker Carlson too. He made sure to throttle down a lot of Tucker Carlson stuff, a lot of Donald Trump stuff, and thank God Donald Trump won this time around, but maybe there was another election that should have been different. I don't know. You guys decide. Again, I treat him like I treat Elon Musk. I love what Elon Musk is doing. I love the idea of Doge, but I want to see where he goes with the chips in people's heads. If he goes too far with the chips in people's heads, I'm like, he says right now it's for people who are blind, people with back issues, people who can't walk. Okay. But the second he puts it into a regular guy, I'm going to be like, okay, what's going on here? That's all. I see him censoring people a little bit on X right now. You got to watch. You got to watch these guys close. But if he's being genuine, this sounds amazing. I'm just watching this episode live. I didn't even see that clip all the way through before I played it for you guys. So I'm just going to watch the rest of this episode and see what's going on. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, helps the channel tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.